The stars had never looked so cold. Commander Jack Holden stood on the bridge of the carrier Valiant Dawn, his hands gripping the metal railing as he stared out into the endless dark. Somewhere out there, beyond the edge of the solar system, an army was coming, an army that wanted to wipe humanity from existence. 3 days ago, the Galactic Council had voted. 12 species had sat in that great chamber among the stars, and 11 of them had chosen to do nothing. The Verax Dominion had declared war on Earth, and the galaxy had decided that humans were not worth saving. Jack remembered. Watching the broadcast, he remembered the way the alien ambassadors had looked away, unable to meet the eyes of the human representative. They had called it neutrality. They had called it wisdom. Jack called it cowardice. Humanity had been traveling among the stars for only 200 years. They were children compared to a species that had conquered space. Travel thousands of years ago, the Verax had destroyed civilizations older and more powerful than Earth. What chance did humans have? But Jack Holden had not joined the fleet to run from a fight. None of them had. Commander, said a voice behind him. Lieutenant Megan Torres stepped forward, her tablet glowing softly in her hands. The last of the civilian transports have left Mars. The outer colonies are evacuating on schedule. Jack nodded slowly. An hour. Fleet status. Megan hesitated. That hesitation told him everything he needed to know. We have 47 combat-ready ships. Sir, the Verax are bringing over 2,000. The numbers were impossible. Jack had known they would be. He had stopped believing in fair fights the moment the Council had abandoned them, but surrender was not in his nature, and it was not in the nature of his people. Then we make every ship count, he said. Quietly, the door to the bridge slid open, and Jack turned to see a figure he had not expected. The being stood nearly 7 feet tall, covered in dark green scales that caught the light like polished stone. His eyes were golden with vertical slits that gave him an ancient, predatory look, but there was something else in those eyes, something that looked almost like respect. Commander Holden, the alien said, his voice deep and rumbling. I am Kathron, warrior, captain of the Scythian volunteers. Jack straightened. The Sith were one of the 11 species that had voted for neutrality. Their government had ordered all Scythian ships to return home and stay out of the conflict, and yet here stood a Scythian warrior on a human ship, using the word volunteers. Your government ordered you to leave, Jack said. Carefully, Kathron's mouth twisted into something that might have been a smile. My government did many things. They ordered us to forget the day when human ship saved a Scythian colony vessel from pirates. They ordered us to ignore the debt we owe. They ordered us to abandon our honor. He shook his head slowly. I do not take such orders. Jack stared at him. How many of you are there? 300 warriors. We have 2 cruisers and 5 fighter squadrons. It is not much, but we are skilled and we do not fear death. 300 against the Verax Dominion. 300 additional soldiers would barely make a difference, but that was not what mattered. What mattered was that someone had chosen to stand with them. Someone had looked at the impossible odds and decided that humanity was worth fighting for. Hot. Jack extended his hand. It was a human gesture, one that Kathron probably did not understand, but the Scythian reached out and clasped it firmly. Welcome aboard, Jack said. We are honored to fight beside you. Megan watched the exchange with wide eyes. When Cathron left to prepare his warriors, she moved closer to Jack. Do you think others will come, other species who disagree with the council's decision? Jack shook his head. I do not know. But even if they do not, we will fight. That is what humans do. We fight for our homes, for our families, for our right to exist. And anyone who stands with us becomes our family too. The alert sirens began to wail. Red lights flashed across the bridge as officers rushed to their stations. Jack felt his heart rate increase, but his voice remained calm. Report, he ordered. Long-range sensors detect multiple contacts at the edge of the system. An officer called out. Configuration matches Varric scout vessels. They will reach weapon range in 6 hours. 6 hours. The war was no longer coming. The war was here. Jack turned to address his crew. These were the men and women who had chosen to stay when they could have fled. Engineers, pilots, soldiers, all of them knowing that they might not survive the next week. He owed them the truth, even if that truth was terrible. You all know why we are here, he began. The Varrics want to destroy us. The galaxy has turned its back on us. We are outnumbered, outgunned, and alone. He paused, letting the weight of those words settle. But we are not without hope. Hope is not found in numbers or weapons. Hope is found in the hearts of those who refuse to surrender. He pointed toward the viewport, toward the stars where the enemy waited. Out there, a species that has conquered 1,000 worlds thinks that humanity will be easy. They think we will break. They think we will beg for mercy. His voice hardened. They are wrong. We are going to show them what it means to fight. Humans, we are going to make them pay for every inch of space they try to take, and when this is over, whether we live or die, the galaxy will remember that humanity did not go quietly. The bridge erupted in cheers. Even Megan, professional as always, allowed herself a small smile. Jack turned back to the viewport. The cold stars did not seem so cold anymore. Somewhere out there, 300 Sithan warriors were preparing to die. Alongside them, somewhere out there, perhaps others were watching, waiting to see if humanity was worth believing in. He intended to give them a reason to believe. The first Varric ships appeared on the tactical display, their formation spreading like a dark stain across the map. Jack Holden took a deep breath and gave the order that would begin the war. For Earth, all hands battle stations. May whatever gods you believe in watch over us all. The valiant dawn surged forward, and the fight for survival began. The rings of Saturn burned with the fire of 100 dying ships. Captain Ben Ortega gripped the armrests of his command chair as another explosion rocked the frigate Defiance. Warning. Lights painted the bridge in shades of angry red, and smoke filled the air. Despite the struggling ventilation systems, hull breach on deck 4. Someone shouted, "We have lost engine 2. Shields down to 12%. Ben watched the tactical display. 3 Varric destroyers surrounded his ship, their weapons tearing the Defiance apart piece by piece. Behind him, a convoy of civilian transports fled toward the inner planets. Families, children, people who would die if he moved his ship even 1 meter from this position. Hold the line, he ordered, his voice steady. Despite the chaos, we hold until those transports are clear. A Sithan warrior named VTHCO stood at the weapons console, his scaled fingers dancing across the controls with deadly precision. He had been assigned to the Defiance 3 days ago, one of Cathron's volunteers who had been spread across the human fleet. In those 3 days he had become part of the crew. I am targeting their weapon systems, VTHCO said. If we disable their primary batteries, we may survive long enough to retreat. Ben shook his head. We are not retreating. Those transports need 20 more minutes. Vthos turned to look at him. His golden eyes held no fear, only understanding. Then we will give them 20 minutes. Defiance was never meant to fight 3 destroyers alone. She was a patrol frigate designed for escort missions and pirate hunting, but her crew refused to accept the mathematics of their situation. They fought with everything they had across the battlefield. Commander Jack Holden watched the Defiance struggle. He wanted to send reinforcements, but every ship he could spare was already committed. The Verax had brought more vessels than intelligence had predicted, and the human fleet was stretched beyond its limits. The Defiance will not last much longer, Megan said quietly. I know. Jack closed his eyes for a moment. Ben Ortega had served under him for 5 years. They had shared meals, celebrated victories, mourned losses together. Now he could only watch as his friend prepared to die. The Scythian cruiser Swift Claw suddenly broke formation. Before anyone could react, it dove straight toward the Verax destroyers attacking the Defiance. Catherine's voice crackled over the communication system. Human vessel Defiance, this is Catherine. We are coming to assist. Hold your position. The Swift Claw was smaller than the Verax destroyers, but the Scytherans flew with a reckless courage that defied all tactical logic. They slammed into the enemy formation like a blade through flesh, their weapons blazing. One Verax destroyer exploded. Another veered away, its hull torn open. Ben Ortega stared at his screen in disbelief. They saved us. They actually saved us. But the battle was not over. More Verax ships poured through the gaps in the human defense line. On the surface of Saturn's largest moon, Titan, ground forces prepared for invasion. Marine Sergeant Kate Brennan crouched behind a barrier of frozen rock, her rifle pressed against her shoulder. Around her, soldiers from 3 different species waited for the enemy. Humans in gray armor, Scytherans in nothing but their natural scales, which were tougher than steel. Even a Futh, the tall insect-like beings who had arrived on a medical ship but had picked up weapons when the shooting started. Here they come, Kate whispered. The Verax were terrifying. They stood 8 ft tall, their bodice covered in bony plates. Their eyes glowed with a pale blue light that spoke of cold intelligence and absolute cruelty. They did not negotiate. They did not accept surrender. They simply killed. The first wave hit the defensive line like a hammer. Kate fired until her rifle overheated, then picked up another from a fallen soldier and kept firing. Beside her, a Sith named Threshglow fought with his bare claws, tearing through Verax armor like paper. They are too many, a human soldier screamed. Kate grabbed him by the collar. They are as many as they are. Now shut up and fight. She did not know where those words came from. She was just a sergeant from a small town in Nebraska, but something about this moment, about fighting beside beings from other worlds, made her feel like more than she had ever been. On Earth, Dr. Lavro Mendes worked without sleep in a laboratory that had once been a university. She was surrounded by pieces of captured Verax Technology, strange machines that pulsed. With unknown energy, her job was to understand them. Her job was to find a weakness, the shield frequency. She muttered to herself, there has to be a pattern. Her team of scientists worked beside her. They were exhausted, terrified, and running out of time. Reports came in every hour about battles. Lost, colonies destroyed, soldiers dying. By the thousands, the Verax had reached Mars. They had snorts burned the colony of New Providence to ashes. 60,000 people had died in a single day. Lavra remembered New Providence. She had attended a conference there 2 years ago. She remembered the children playing in the biodome, the farmers tending their crops, the artists painting murals on the tunnel walls. All gone now, Olive. Them gone. She wiped tears from her eyes and returned to her work, crying would not bring them back, but science might save those who remained. The answer came at 3:00 in the morning. Lavra stared at her screen, hardly believing what she saw. The Verax shields operated on a rotating frequency, but the rotation followed a predictable pattern. If she could build a weapon that matched that pattern, she could punch through their defenses. I found it, she whispered, then louder, I found it. Someone get me a communication link to the fleet. Now her discovery would not win the war, but it would give humanity a chance. And a chance was all they had ever needed. Back at Saturn, the battle finally ended. The Verax withdrew, leaving behind a graveyard of broken ships and frozen bodies. The Defiance had survived barely. The Swift Claw had lost half its crew. Catherine met with Jack Holden on the Valiant Dawn. The Scythian warrior was wounded, green blood staining his scales, but he stood straight and proud. Your people fight well, Catherine said. I have seen warriors from many species. Humans are different. You do not fight for conquest or glory. You fight for each other. Jack nodded slowly. We fight for what matters: family, friends, home, and you have become all three. Catherine placed his clawed hand on Jack's shoulder. Then we will stand together until the end, whatever that end may be. Outside the viewport, the stars continued to burn. The war was far from over, but somewhere in the darkness something had changed. Humanity was no longer alone, and together they would face whatever came next. The news spread across the galaxy like fire through dry grass. 300 Kuran warriors had defied their government to fight alongside humanity. They had bled for a species not their own. They had died defending human ships and human soldiers, and they had done it without hesitation. On the Sethan home world, protests erupted in the streets. Citizens demanded answers from their leaders. How could the council abandon a species that had once saved Catherine lives? How could they watch while the Verax committed genocide? The government had no answers. Within weeks, the ruling party began to crumble, but the Scytherans were not the only ones watching. A Velith medical ship called the Gentle Wind arrived at Earth orbit. Its captain, a tall insect-like being named Tavan, reported severe engine damage that would require months to repair. The damage was, of course, entirely fictional, but it gave Tavan an excuse to stay in human space while his medical teams trained human doctors in advanced trauma care. I cannot fight, Tavan explained to Commander Holden during a private meeting. My species is physically weak, and my training is in healing, not killing, but I can save lives, and every life I save is one more Soldier who can fight tomorrow, Jack shook the Velith's slender hand. You are as valuable as any warrior, perhaps more. Across the galaxy, other small acts of defiance began to multiply. Corvani engineer, named ZTHL accidentally transmitted classified Verax fleet positions to human intelligence. When questioned by his superiors, he claimed it was a computer error. The error happened 17 more times over the next month. A group of Panther merchants began selling weapons to Earth at cost, hiding the shipments inside legitimate cargo containers. They claimed ignorance when the Verax demanded investigations. Their profits vanished, but their consciences remained clear. Lieutenant Commander Chris Hayes worked in human intelligence headquarters, buried deep beneath the mountains of an unnamed planet. His job was to gather information, and suddenly information was pouring in from unexpected sources. Anonymous transmissions, mislabeled files, convenient accidents that always seemed to benefit humanity. Someone out there is helping us, Chris told Jack during a secure call. I do not know who or why, but we are not as alone as we thought. Jack allowed himself a small smile. Then let us give them something to believe in. The plan was dangerous. The Verax supply depot at Nexus Station was the primary source of fuel and ammunition for the enemy fleet. If humanity could destroy it, the Verax advance would stall for months. But Nexus Station was deep inside enemy territory, protected by minefields and patrol ships. A conventional attack would fail. Sergeant Kate Brennan was selected to lead the ground assault. She had proven herself on Titan, fighting with a courage that had earned her a reputation among both humans and aliens. Her squad was a mix of species, 12 humans, 8 Siths, including Threshgull, who had become her closest friend, and 2 Velith engineers who could disable the station's power systems. This is a suicide mission, Kate told her squad during the briefing. Command does not expect us to survive. Our job is to cause enough damage that the fleet can finish the job. If you want to back out, I will not judge you. Nobody moved, nobody spoke. They simply looked at her with steady eyes, waiting for orders. Kate felt something catch in her throat. These beings trusted her. These beings from different worlds, different cultures, different histories, had chosen to follow her into almost certain death. Very well, she said quietly, we move at dawn. Infiltration went better than expected. A stolen Verax shuttle carried them past the outer defenses. The Velith engineers disabled the security systems with terrifying efficiency. Within hours, Kate and her squad were inside the station, planting explosives on every fuel tank and ammunition storage area they could find. Then everything went wrong. The Verax discovered them. Kate did not know how. Perhaps a sensor they had missed, perhaps a patrol that arrived early. It did not matter. What mattered was that suddenly they were surrounded, cut off from their extraction point, fighting for their lives. Fall back to the secondary hangar, Kate shouted. We can hold there until extraction arrives. They fought through corridors filled with enemies. Kate watched 3 of her soldiers die. She watched Threshgull take a wound that would have killed a human instantly, only to keep fighting with blood pouring from his side. She watched the Velith engineers sacrifice themselves to seal a door, giving the others time to escape. The secondary hangar was empty when they arrived. No ship, no rescue. Kate looked at her remaining soldiers and saw the truth. Their eyes, they were going to die. Here, it has been an honor, Threshglow said, his voice weak from blood loss. Fighting beside you, dying beside you, I regret nothing. Kate gripped her rifle. We are not dead yet, and we are not dying without finishing the mission. She pressed the detonator. The explosions began on the far side of the station. Chain reaction that ripped through fuel, tanks and ammunition stores. The entire structure shook. Fire bloomed in the darkness of space. The Verax advance would be crippled for months, but Kate and her squad were still trapped. Hangar doors suddenly exploded inward. Ship appeared through the smoke and debris, its design unlike anything Kate had seen. Velith markings covered its hull, and at the controls sat Tavin, the medical ship captain who had claimed he could not fight. Get in, Tavin shouted through the communication system quickly. I cannot hold them off. Forever they ran. Kate carried Threshglow on her shoulders. The remaining soldiers helped the wounded. Aboard, Tavin flew like a being possessed, weaving through Verax fire with moves that should have been impossible for a ship that size. They escaped barely. Tavin's ship was damaged beyond repair by the time they reached human space, but they were alive. Doc Kate found Tavin in the medical bay treating Threshglow's wounds with his own hands. The Velith looked up at her approach. You came for us, Kate said. You said you could not fight. Tavin's compound eyes glittered. I said I was not trained for killing, but there is more to fighting than killing. When I heard your distress signal, I did not think about orders or consequences. I only thought about saving lives. Perhaps that is what humanity has taught me. Kate sat down beside him. Your people will punish you for this. Tavin made a sound that might have been a laugh. Then I will stay with you. Your species has a way of making others feel welcome. I believe I would like to experience more of that. Across the galaxy, the story of Nexus Station spread. A human sergeant and an alien doctor, a squad of mixed species fighting and dying together. A rescue that should have been impossible but happened anyway. More ships began arriving at Earth. More volunteers, more species who had watched from the shadows and finally decided to step into the light. The tide was beginning to turn, and somewhere in the darkness, the Verax Dominion began to understand that they had made a terrible mistake. The Verax Dominion had never lost a war. For 3,000 years they had conquered every species that stood against them. They had burned worlds. They had enslaved billions. They had become so used to victory that they had forgotten what defeat felt like. But humanity had reminded them of fear. The attack on Nexus Station had crippled the Verax supply lines for months. The growing alliance of volunteer species had made the enemy cautious, and worst of all, the humans refused to surrender. No matter how many battles they lost, no matter how many soldiers died, they kept fighting. The Verax High Command decided to end the war once and for all. They gathered every available ship from across their empire, 2,000 warships, the largest fleet they had ever assembled, aimed at a single target, Earth. Admiral Nathan Cole took command of the combined defense fleet. He was an older man, gray-haired and scarred from decades of service. He had fought pirates in the outer colonies. He had led the defense of Mars during the first Verax assault. And now he would lead humanity's last stand. His fleet was smaller than the enemy's, much smaller, but it was no longer purely human. Scythian cruisers flew beside human carriers. Velith. Medical ships waited behind the lines, ready to collect the wounded. Corvani. Frigates provided electronic warfare support, and dozens of smaller vessels from a dozen different species filled the gaps. This is Admiral Cole to all ships, Nathan announced over the fleet-wide channel. The enemy is coming. They believe this will be an easy victory. They believe we will break. They are wrong. He paused, letting his words sink in. We are not fighting alone. We are not fighting for ourselves. We are fighting for every species that chose to stand with us. We are fighting for every being who believed that humanity was worth saving. Today we prove them right. The Verax fleet appeared at the edge of the solar system like a dark cloud across the stars. 2,000 ships, their weapons charged, their intentions clear. They came to destroy everything humanity had ever built. The battle began. Dr. Lavra Mendez's shield technology proved its worth immediately. Human ships survived hits that should have destroyed them. The new weapons she had designed punched through Verax armor with devastating efficiency. For the first time in the war, the enemy was taking losses they had not expected. Commander Jack Holden led the carrier group in a flanking maneuver that caught a Verax battle squadron off guard. His pilots flew with desperate courage, striking at enemy ships and retreating before the Verax could respond. Lieutenant Ryan Garcia, a young man from California who had never expected to be a war hero, destroyed 3 enemy destroyers in a single engagement. But the Verax had numbers. For every ship they lost, they had 5 more to take its place. Human fleet was pushed back, then pushed back again. Ships began to die. Cathron and his remaining Scytherin warriors defended the orbital defense platform above Earth. The platform controlled a network of weapon satellites that provided the planet's last line of defense. If it fell, Earth would be defenseless. The Verax sent boarding parties. Hundreds snorts of their soldiers stormed the platform, fighting through corridors and chambers with brutal efficiency. Cathron met them with equal brutality. He was wounded within the first hour. A Verax blade had opened his side and green blood stained his scales, but he kept fighting. His warriors kept fighting. Humans stationed on the platform fought beside them, their smaller bodies working together with Scytherin strength in perfect coordination. They are breaking through the inner ring, a human soldier shouted. Cathron looked at the tactical display. The Verax had planted breaching charges on the main reactor. If those charges detonated, the platform would explode, taking everyone aboard with it. He did not hesitate. Continue the defense, he ordered his warriors. I will handle the charges. He ran. His wounds screamed at him. His lungs burned, but he ran because there was no other choice. The Verax soldiers guarding the charges saw him coming. They opened fire. Cathron felt impacts against his body, felt bones break and organs tear. He kept running. He reached the charges just as they began to flash. Activation imminent. Seconds remaining. He looked at the device and knew there was only one way to stop it. He threw himself onto the charges, covering them with his body. The explosion tore through him, but his body absorbed the force. The reactor survived, the platform survived, and the soldiers he had protected lived to keep fighting. Cathon died as he had lived, with honor, with courage, with humanity at his side. On the bridge of the Valiant Dawn, Jack Holden received the news. He closed his eyes for a Moment remembering the Scythian warrior who had become his friend. Then he opened them again and returned to the battle. The fighting continued for 3 days. Ships were destroyed, soldiers died, the human fleet was reduced to half its strength, then a quarter. Admiral Cole ordered a final defensive formation around Earth, preparing for the end. Then the impossible happened. New contacts appeared on the sensors, hundreds of them, thousands. For a terrible moment, everyone thought the Verax had received reinforcements, but the markings on those ships were not Verax. The Galactic Council fleet had arrived. Scythian warships led the charge, their government overthrown by citizens who refused to stand by while heroes died. Velith carriers followed their medical crews, now accompanied by combat wings. Corvani battleships revealed weapon systems they had hidden from the Council for centuries, and behind them came the Penthri, the Ilfrani, the Zeruk, and a dozen other species who had finally chosen a side. The Verax fleet, already damaged from 3 days of fighting, suddenly found itself surrounded. Admiral Cole stared at his tactical display in disbelief. All ships, he said slowly, we have friends. Battle turned in an instant. The Verax, caught between the human survivors and the Council fleet, began to crumble. Their formations broke, their commanders panicked. For the first time in 3,000 years, the Verax Dominion faced defeat. Kate Brennan led a boarding action against the Verax flagship, her squad, reinforced by Sith warriors and Velith medics, fought through the massive vessel until they reached the bridge. The Verax admiral tried to surrender. Kate remembered Kathron. She remembered Threshkl, who had died on Nexus Station. She remembered every soldier who had given their life for this moment. Your people do not accept surrender, she said coldly. Neither do we. The battle ended at dawn on Earth. The Verax fleet was destroyed. Their empire would never threaten humanity again. Jack Holden stood on the bridge of the Valiant Dawn, watching the debris float past his viewport. Tavan stood beside him, along with Admiral Cole and a Scythian captain who had led the Council reinforcements. We won, Cole said quietly. I cannot believe we actually won. Jack shook his head. Not alone, never alone. He looked at the aliens standing beside him, allies who had become family. This victory belongs to everyone who stood with us, and we will never forget them. The war was over, but the work of remembering had just begun. 1 year had passed since the war ended. Earth was healing. Cities that had been damaged were being rebuilt. Families that had been separated were reuniting. And across the planet, monuments were rising to honor those who had fallen. But the largest monument of all stood in the heart of what had once been New York City. It was carved from stone gathered from 100 different worlds, marble from Earth, black granite from the Scythian home world, crystal from Velith mining colonies, metals from Sivani forges. Every species that had fought alongside humanity had contributed something. And on that monument, carved in letters that would last for centuries, were names, every name of every being who had died defending Earth, human names and alien names side by side, equal in death, as they had been equal in battle. Admiral Jack Holden stood before the monument in his dress uniform. The war had aged him. His hair was grayer, his face more lined, his eyes carrying a weight that would never fully lift. But he stood straight and proud because the dead deserved nothing less. Beside him, stood the people who had become his family. Megan Torres, now a captain, her own right, commanding the rebuilt Valiant Dawn. Ryan Garcia, the young pilot who had become an ace during the final battle, his chest covered in medals he never talked about. Lara Mendes, the scientist whose discoveries had turned the tide, now leading the new Intes Technology Institute. And the aliens, Taven, officially recognized as a citizen of Earth, wearing a uniform that blended Velith and human designs. The Scythian captain who had led the council reinforcements, a female named Rithkala who had become the new ambassador to Earth. Representatives from every species that had stood with humanity. Kate Brennan walked slowly toward the monument. Her arm was still in a regeneration sleeve, healing from wounds that refused to close easily. She carried flowers from 3 different worlds, their colors bright against the gray stone. She stopped at a name carved near the center of the monument. Kithron, warrior, captain, hero. I brought these from your home world, she said quietly, placing the flowers at the base of the stone. Your family wanted you to have them. They said to tell you that your name is spoken with honor in every village, in every city. Children learn about you in school. Warriors swear oaths in your memory. She paused, blinking back tears. And I wanted to tell you that I miss you. Every day you taught me what it means to fight for something bigger than yourself. You showed me that honor is not about species or borders. It is about choosing to stand with those who need you, even when it costs everything. Taven appeared beside her. The Velith placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. He would be proud of you. Kate nodded. I hope so. Ceremony began as the sun rose over the rebuilt city. Thousands of beings had gathered, humans and aliens, soldiers and civilians, leaders and ordinary people. They came to remember, they came to honor, they came to celebrate what they had achieved together. Admiral Cole spoke first. His words were simple and direct, describing the battles that had been fought and the prices that had been paid. He read names of ships that had been destroyed. He acknowledged species that had sacrificed everything. We stood at the edge of extinction, Cole said, and we survived, not because we were stronger than our enemy, not because we had better weapons or smarter tactics. We survived because we were not alone. We survived because beings from across the galaxy looked at humanity and saw something worth fighting for. He stepped back and the Scythian ambassador took his place. Rithkala was different from Kithron, where he had been a warrior. She was a diplomat, where he had been fierce. She was calm, but she carried the same fire in her eyes, the same determination that had defined her. People's sacrifice. My brother Kithron was the first of our kind to stand with humanity. She began. He defied our government. He abandoned his career. He risked everything because he believed that honor mattered more than politics. Many called him a fool. She paused, looking out at the crowd. Those people were wrong. Kithron understood something that the Galactic Council had forgotten. He understood that the measure of a species is not found in its technology or its military power. It is found in how that species treats others. Humanity treated us as equals when we were strangers. They saved our colony ship. When they had nothing to gain, they welcomed us into their homes and their hearts. Her voice grew stronger. My brother did not die for humanity. He died with humanity. There is a Difference when you die for someone. You are separate from them when you die. With someone, you are part of them. Catham became human in every way that mattered, and in doing so he taught us what it truly means to be Sith'Tharan. She turned to face the monument. To fight alongside humanity is not a burden or a debt. It is not a sacrifice or a duty. It is a privilege. It is to be celebrated, and it is to be honored. Beyond worlds, the crowd was silent. Then slowly a sound began to rise. Clapping from human hands, clicking from scything claws, humming from velvas. Every species had their own way of showing respect, and all of them were doing it now. Admiral Holden stepped forward. His eyes were bright with unshed tears. 1 year ago I stood on the bridge of my ship and watched the Verax fleet approaching Earth. I thought we were going to die. I thought humanity was going to be wiped from the galaxy. And I was at peace with that because I knew we would die fighting. He shook his head slowly. I was wrong. We did not die, and the reason we did not die is standing all around me right now. Scythans who defied their government. Velith who pretended to have broken engine. Kavani who accidentally sent us enemy positions, and 100 other species who risked everything because they believed in us. He pointed at the monument. These names represent the best of all of us, human and alien, soldier and healer, warrior and scientist. They came from different worlds and spoke different languages and had different histories, but they fought together. They bled together, they died together, and they will be remembered together forever. Jack stepped back and let silence fill the space. The ceremony was ending. People began to move, to talk, to embrace. The formal remembrance was giving way to personal grief and personal joy. Cake found herself standing beside Tavin and Rithkala. The three of them looked at the monument, at the names of friends they had lost, at the proof that sacrifice was never forgotten. What happens now? Kate asked. Rithkala smiled. Now we build, we create the galaxy that our fallen dreamed of. Galaxy where species stand together instead of apart. A galaxy where no one has to face darkness alone. Tavin nodded. And we teach, we tell the story of what happened here. We make sure that every child on every world knows that there was a time when beings from across the stars chose courage over safety, honor, profit, and family over species. Kate looked up at the sky. Somewhere out there, new stations were being built. New ships were being launched. New alliances were being formed. The war had ended, but the future was just beginning. Family, she said softly, that is what we became. That is what we will always be. Behind her, the monument stood silent and eternal, names carved in stone, memories carved in hearts. Reminder that humanity's greatest strength was never its technology or its military. It was the ability to make allies into family, and family fights for each other. Always.